With drafting now part of the AFL landscape on an annual basis, and it being 30 years on, we thought it was an opportune time to have a close look at those that have been great success stories at every point in the draft where the players are chosen. We're going to start with choice 15 and work our way back towards 1. At choice 15, there's been some wonderful players that have gone on to play in the AFL and a couple that are still playing. Robbie Tarrant is one of the best key defenders in the AFL at North Melbourne, chosen at this point way back in 2008.
Tarrant, bang! What about that? Who was it underneath their noons? Boy, did he straight line it with Tarrant.
Travis Varco was delighted the Geelong fans for many years before switching to Collingwood and has had a similar impact there. His goal-kicking special and this boy from SA in the first instance when drafted has become a terrific Indigenous player in the AFL.
Fed it out to Selwood straight away off to Varco. Varco can go all the way. Runs to 45. Travis Varco! Oh, what a start for the Cats!
Another key guy to consider at this point is Brady Rawlings, who recently returned as the football manager to the Kangaroos. Chosen from Devonport in Tasmania, this youngster come across at 17 years of age way back in 1998. Went on to play 245 games and win 3 best and fairest.
McLeod, great tackle by Rawlings.
The coaches loved him. He played his role to perfection for his club as that negating defender, also set up the play from down back after starting as a wingman as a draftee.
Rawlings with 3, 4 bounces, 5, but can keep on going. 50 out, Rawlings unloads, goal of the day!
He was a member of the NAB AFL Academy, the first ever intake into that program, and was a star with the best boys from right round Australia in their matches against the Irish. He ends up my nomination as the best ever choice at choice 15. For the best ever choice number 14 in the AFL draft, I've narrowed it down to just 2. I think that Grant Birchall, another Tasmanian by the way, that come from Launceston, ended up a wonderful player for Hawthorn. Played in 4 premiership sides in his 240-odd games to date. He's now going to continue his career up north in Queensland playing for Brisbane as he rounds out what has been a fantastic career.
Bang inside they go again. Here's Ruffin, Nik Boston.
The other contender is one that's very much known in the game for his coaching ability, and a premiership coach he is at that, in Adam Simpson with the West Coast Eagles. People may have forgotten, he was a 300-game player with North Melbourne, and he was a best and fairest winner, a real star of the game through the midfield.
Simpson, it's high, it's good, it's a great goal to Simpson.
Simpson was a boy that emerged from the northern suburbs of Melbourne. He played for the Northern Knights and as a youngster played on the wing, a left footer of course, but very strong overhead. I think the real X factor with Adam Simpson as a player was his competitiveness, also his coachability. One that was a no-fuss player right throughout his career, got exactly what you expected from him with his consistency of effort, of endeavour, his 2 premierships, winning a club best and fairest on top of the 300 games. Pretty difficult to split the pair, but I'll go with Adam Simpson as the best ever choice at number 14. Choice number 13, the best ever. Well, it might be unlucky for some, but not for AFL clubs picking at this point. You'd keep your number 13 choice when you look at this sort of list. Patrick Cripps, the Carlton captain and superstar of the game.
Captain fantastic, if you don't mind, at Marvel Stadium.
Shannon Hearn, the premiership captain, of course, for the West Coast Eagles, all chosen at choice 13. Nick Del Santo, Bob Murphy and Jack Revolt. What a group so far. That's 5, and we'll toss in Shane Crawford, the Hawthorn premiership star. I've narrowed it down to just a few of these. Nick Del Santo, 322 games, 3 times an All-Australian player, was a star for the Saints at the end of his career at North Melbourne.
Del Santo for his 4! Oh, my goodness!
Bob Murphy, 312 games and an All-Australian captain. One of the true legends of the Western Bulldogs.
Chance for Robert Murphy. He's got to beat Ben Johnson. Where will he go? He decides to do it all himself and bring it back. Inspiring stuff from Robert Murphy, if you don't mind.
Jack Revolt. Will he get the nod? 262 games already, a three-time All-Australian and, of course, a three-time Coleman medalist. And I think there's still a bit more to come with Jack.
Long ball, here comes Rawlings! What a grab of the grand final!
I've gone for Shane Crawford, a legendary player at Hawthorn. Over 300 games, a Brownlow medalist, 4 Best and Fairest awards and 4 All-Australian nominations.
He's got the 50, the captain, onto the right boot. It is home! How about that?
Back in 1991, when Shane was selected at Choice 13, recruiting wasn't as sophisticated. He was available to the Sydney Swans. They thought he was too small and not good enough. He ended up in the open draft and Hawthorn swooped on him at this point and took a guy that ends up one of the great champions of that particular era. And what a fitting moment. His last game was a winning grand final with Hawthorn, his only premiership success. But a champion of the game is my nomination, Shane Crawford, as the best player chosen at number 13.
That's what I'm talking about!
The best performed player at 12 is probably one of the toughest tasks that I've had in differentiating between stars of the game. Look at these three: Shawn Burgoyne, Gavin Wanganeen and Cyril Rioli. 3 Indigenous champions of the game, all chosen at number 12 in the draft. Let's go through each of them. Cyril Rioli, of course, from the Northern Territory, taken by Hawthorn. Clubs were surprised he was still there at that particular point. It was touted he'd go in the top 10 but didn't. He went on to be one of the most exciting players in the game. In his 200 games, he's a premiership player on 3 occasions, of course, and a Norm Smith medalist to boot.
Ducks out of trouble. Brilliant. Rioli puts it through. How about that for a start?
Shawn Burgoyne, the game's record holder for Indigenous players, playing 376 games. Drafted at this particular number by Port Adelaide, of course, out of South Australia, then moved to Hawthorn, where he become even a better player than he was at Port.
Burgoyne to put them in front. He doesn't miss. He's kicked free.
And then, of course, Gavin Wanganeen won a Brownlow medal at 20 years of age, playing for Essendon. End up a superstar with Port Adelaide as he switched back when that club come into the competition.
They pump it forward. Mcrae Wanganeen. That's appropriate.
Wanganeen played over 300 games, was 5 times All-Australian, played in 2 premierships, and is already inducted into the AFL Hall of Fame.
Hugging the boundary line. It's still a live ball. Out of mid-air. Wanganeen. The goal of the year. Look at that.
Gavin Wanganeen started his career as a back pocket player, but ended up a playmaker all over the ground. Not big in stature, but very, very rubbery in his agility. He could get in and out of tough situations in a flash with his great reflexes and wonderful skills. He gets my nomination as the best ever choice at Choice 12. At Choice 11, we've got plenty to consider, including 4 current superstars of the game. Toby Green, the Giants' star medium forward. Tom Lynch shifts from the Gold Coast, of course, down to Richmond and becomes a premiership star in his first year there. Steele Sidebottom, for so many years, been a brilliant player for Collingwood across the midfield. And Shaun Higgins, a star for the North Melbourne Kangaroos, has already achieved 220 games. I'm going to wind back the clock in search of my best ever number 11 and throw up the names of a couple of real superstars of the past. One, Lenny Hayes, a St Kilda superstar, of course, and a Norm Smith medalist. And the other, Brad Johnson, the smiling assassin from the Western Bulldogs. Lenny Hayes was a real star of the game. And to think that he was chosen from Pennant Hills in the west of Sydney, a boy that at 17 years of age had won the Morrish Medal. He became one of the stars of the Saints in 297 games. A guy that wasn't over quick, but he always seemed to have so much time. A great user of the footy and unlucky not to have ended up a premiership player for the Saints.
Well, he's a man for a big occasion, we know that, but can he get the distance? He's pumped it hard, he's pumped it long, he's kicked the goal. Lenny Hayes found a miss when he needed it.
My nomination as the best ever player at Choice 11 goes to Brad Johnson. the boy from the western suburbs that was drafted to the Western Bulldogs. He didn't have to shift home. He became a legend of the club, a 6-time All-Australian, 3 times the best and fairest winner at the Bulldogs, the club's record holder with 364 games.
Tries to flick it back. Hacked out of mid-air by Johnson. Goal of the season.
Brad Jeltsen, of course, emerged from the Western Jets in the early days of the NAB League. He was a wingman. He played for Vic Metro. I'll never forget him on the bus going to the deciding game. It was the diligence of this young man as he went over the notes that were given by the coach of that particular time to his team in preparation for that deciding match in Adelaide. He was a great thinker and student of the game that backed it up with wonderful courage and skill. He started as a wingman, ended up that medium-sized forward that could convert goals from near impossible positions.
And lines up the goals and he kicks it! What a passage of play!
A superstar player and obviously in the AFL Hall of Fame, a best ever choice 11. As the best ever choice number 10, I come up with 4 possibilities. Phil Davis has been a wonderful player for the Giants after being drafted at choice 10 by the Adelaide Crows at the start of his career. Luke McFarlane, he was also drafted by Hawthorn, but he made his name as a wonderful defender for Fremantle when he was traded back to the Fremantle Dockers. 256 games as one of those negating defenders that created great rebound for his team, made him a star of the game.
This is it, last roll of the dice. Fremantle was 4 minutes.
Another from the past that must be considered as one of the best ever top 10s is Nathan Brown. Nathan Brown from the Western Bulldogs that went across to Richmond. The left footer that we now see as a media personality was a star in his time. A goal kicker, exceptional overhead for a player of his size. He comes from the Bendigo Pioneers in the NAB League to become one of the stars in his 219 games at AFL level.
Almost takes the mark, he recovers beautifully. Oh, he's grabbed by the head, umpire says play on, he has another go. Brown, have a look at this. The Mcrae Brown kicks the sealer.
My nomination for the best could only be one player from this group, and that is Paddy Dangerfield. He's out in his own with the way his career is unfolding, and there's still a bit to play out as yet, I would suggest. He's approaching 250 games. He's already a 7-time All-Australian. He's won 3 Best and Fairest awards and a Brownlow medal. He continues to epitomise what is the spectacular game.
Brilliant by Dangerfield, accelerating through. How about that?
Paddy Dangerfield was somewhat of a surprise choice at choice number 10 back when he was selected by the Adelaide Crows. Matt Rendell, their recruiting officer at the time, went against the fans' opinion. They wanted a South Australian chosen at that number, and this boy from the Geelong Falcons was chosen, although he still had year 12 to finish at school, and he didn't come across to Adelaide until the following year. Of course, it's now part of AFL history that he left the Crows and went back to Geelong, where he became a superstar of the game. He is a player worth going a long way to watch from week to week. So Paddy Dangerfield is my nomination as the best ever player chosen at choice 10.
Dangerfield on the boundary line, got it working. What about that?
As the best choice at number 9, I've come up with 5 contenders. The first couple are premiership stars with the Tigers, Dion Prestia and Nik Boston. Prestia, of course, was chosen by the Gold Coast Suns, but made the switch to come back to Tigerland, where he's ended up a superstar, including that wonderful grand final this year and, of course, their best and fairest in a premiership year.
Prestia, 40 metres out. Dion Prestia, the human meatball. He's done it.
Nik Boston continues to be a rock across halfback for the Tigers, and his short career of around 140-odd games is a double premiership player. North Melbourne captain Jack Siebel has had a terrific career in over 200 games already and has to be a contender. Come down from the Murray Bush Rangers, become a player as a medium forward that can push through the midfield and, of course, emerges as their captain today.
He'll get close down. He gets a foot to it. The goal's going to be kicked by Siebel and the Kangaroos at the front with 20 seconds left.
Another contender for mine is getting better with age. He was chosen by St Kilda at choice number 9, and we're talking about Ben Mcavoy, but then traded to Hawthorn, and he becomes one of the top ruckmen in the AFL today, has passed the 200-game mark and has to be considered as one of the great choices at number 9.
Mcavoy, back-to-back goals for the Hawks in really quick time.
However, my nomination for the best player chosen at number 9 goes to Chad Corns from Port Adelaide. Corns was a premiership player, an All-Australian, a guy that played 255 games. A wonderful mark, could stand on their shoulders, yet also push forward as well.
Michael Pettigrew invited to play on. Chad Corns coming in over the back of Michael Wilson.
He's also continued in coaching ranks after retiring from the game. Chad Corns, of course, is from a wonderful footballing family in South Australia. Graham, a star for Glenelg, had come across to North Melbourne for a period. And of course, Kane, his brother, was a wonderful player for Port Adelaide as well. The Corns name is remembered today, in my view, as the best ever choice number 9, with Chad Corns winning that particular honour.
What a goal by Corns!
At number 8, I've narrowed it down to 4 chances to be the best ever player chosen at that number. Dyson Heppel, the Essendon captain, has been a wonderful success since chosen from the Gippsland Power team in the NAB League. From the past, Judd Bolton, chosen from the Calder Cannons. He went up to Sydney and played over 300 games. In fact, 325 games, as one of the most courageous midfielders in the game. Down Geelong way, they were wrapped in the performance of Joel Corey in his 276 games. A best and fairest winner, a premiership player, this tall midfielder become a superstar after coming across from WA after being chosen at choice number 8.
Oh, magnificent Corey!
However, I give the best ever choice number 8 to another Geelong player, a teammate of Corey's for a number of years in Jimmy Bartel. What a career he had in 300 games. He won both the Charles Brownlow Medal and the Norm Smith Medal. That's a sign of greatness in anyone's mind, and of course was part of those 3 premierships at Geelong. A wonderful, courageous player in the air, a gifted player at ground level with his attack on the ball, and he was a back-to-back All-Australian and underage level as well. Always a star of the game that didn't disappoint the Geelong fans in his spectacular career. Jimmy Bartel, my nomination as the best ever number 8.
There's big moments in grand finals, and the ball's in the hands of the right man, Jimmy Bartel.
I come up with 7 players to consider at choice 7. A couple of current day stars in Nick Haines from the Greater Western Sydney Giants. Ollie Wines, one of the co-captains of Port Adelaide, great young player through the midfield. A couple from the past in Andrew Mackie, again part of that successful era at the Cats. In his 280 games, he was a star across half-back.
Andrew Mackie.
Current Giants coach Leon Cameron was picked at this point. Went on to play 256 games, of course, initially chosen by the Western Bulldogs, way back there in the late 80s, in the early years of the draft. A recent retiree in Jordan Lewis was picked at choice 7. What a wonderful career with the Hawks, and then lately with Melbourne he had in his 319 games. Chris Johnson, up there at the Brisbane Lions, was a superstar in the back pocket. Indigenous Team of the Century player. 264 games and 3 premierships. He really set the game alight for the Brisbane Lions with his runs from defence.
And now Johnson accelerating and bouncing and creating and delivering inside 50. That was good footy all round.
But my choice for the best ever choice 7 goes to another guy from down at Geelong in Joel Selwood. What a career he has had. He's been one of the best players of the modern era. He come, of course, from the Bendigo Pioneers, taken by Geelong, and has already played 295 games for the Cats, winning 3 premierships, of course, being named All-Australian on 6 occasions and 3 times a best and fairest winner. And along the way won the NAB AFL Rising Star to boot.
The captain breaks out of the middle, has a bounce. Can he go all the way home? Drives it long, goal square, all the way home. If anybody can, Selwood can.
Joel Selwood, my nomination is the best ever choice, number 7. Surprisingly, it's taken until just recent years for number 6 to produce some real stars of the game. But recently, the likes of Jaden Stevenson, the rising star winner from Collingwood, Sam Petrevski-Seton at Carlton, and Ben King, this year a rising star nomination up there at the Gold Coast, has given us hope that some great players are going to emerge from this pick.
King lurking up, and how good is Ben King looking?
The two that have come on also in recent years are Chad Wingard, the former Port Adelaide small forward who made All-Australian as a youngster, now across at Hawthorn, and of course Jackson Mcrae, a real prolific ball winner with the Western Bulldogs, would be the two that would fight out the best ever player at choice number 6.
Dixon front and centre, Mcrae to level the scores. Look at this, the Dogs running riot.
I'm going to go with Jack Mccrae. He's an emerging superstar. He's won All-Australian honours for the first time. He's now played 141 games and played such a pivotal role in their first premiership for a long, long time a couple of years ago. Unsighted in his 17th year, Jack Mccrae became a star in his 18th year in the NAB League. On grand final day, in fact, we had the scores tied at full time, but the siren didn't blow, and it was the super point, the next score wins, that seen Jack Mccrae put his name right up there as a player that would take the big moments. He scored a point for the Oakley Chargers to have them win that grand final on his way to being choice number 6 a couple of months later. He gets my nod just ahead of Chad Wingard for the best ever selection at choice number 6. At choice number 5, I've got 6 contenders, all of them greats of the game in my view. Luke Power, a 300-game player, of course at the Brisbane Lions, and finished his career with the Giants, but he was part of that triple premiership side with the Brisbane Lions back in the early 2000s. Jared McVeigh, recently retired with 325 games on the clock. A best and fairest winner, captain of the club, a boy from Sydney that became a star for the Sydney Footy Club.
And McVeigh, brilliantly done. And McVeigh gets the quick reply.
A couple of current day stars in Travis Boak. Maybe he's had his best year ever with Port Adelaide Football Club after coming across from the Geelong Falcons. And Ben Cunnington, another product of the Falcons that is a star with the North Melbourne Kangaroos. All very worthy contenders. But we've got 2 of the all-time greats also there as choice number 5s from the past. And of course, Scott Pendlebury was taken by Collingwood at this spot. And Lance Buddy Franklin taken by Hawthorn at choice number 5. How do you split the 2? They're both superstars of the game. Pendlebury, taken in 2005, has played his 300th game this year, of course, and has been a 6-time All-Australian, a Norm Smith medalist, as well as winning Collingwood's Copeland Trophy on 5 occasions. How do you beat that? I think only Buddy Franklin can do that. He has been a super player, again passing his 300th game right at the end of this season. He's been a 4-time Coleman medalist. He's made the All-Australian side on 8 occasions, once as captain. That's a marvellous record. He's approaching his 1000th goal. He's one of the all-time great players. I'll never forget Buddy coming through in his draft year. He was just a 17-year-old, so he's a little bit up and down. In a trial match, he kicked 8 before half-time. He looked to be the number 1 draft choice. We come across to the Nationals here in Victoria and was a little bit quiet. In fact, he's on the bench down at Geelong in a tight contest, and they said, put Buddy back on. The young boy might be able to do something. Well, he kicked the winning goal with 30 seconds to go from outside 50. We saw that flash of brilliance that was to come at the AFL level with a young Lance Franklin at the age of 17. He nudges out Scott Pendlebury to be the best ever player taken at choice number 5.
Now Franklin, he might do what he did at the MCG. He doesn't get the right bounce. Could he do it? He's 50-48 out. He goes for it. He has done it. Oh. Dennis, where are you?
For choice number 4, I've come up with 6 contenders once again. A couple of emerging stars in Marcus Bontempelli. Could a youngster have done any more in his first 5 years in the AFL? He's played 127 games. He certainly is one of the shining lights for the Bulldogs and a superstar in the making.
So the Bont from a standstart, he still was able to dance to the left and then a little step to the right.
Clayton Oliver, same thing with Melbourne, a boy from the Murray Bush Rangers that had been a prolific ball winner through the midfield since he was drafted at choice number 4. Andrew Gaff keeps racking them up. He's the running man, a running machine and Mr. Consistency for the West Coast Eagles. 197 games since he was chosen from the Oakley Chargers in the NAB League.
Oh, Mitchell, lightning handball to the perfect side for Andrew Gaff.
From the past, one of the greats of the Brisbane Lions as well, a member of that triple premiership side in the early 2000s in Justin Lepich. Overlooked by Hawthorn at a time when they could get the last remaining youngsters from their zone. They overlooked the boy that had played in their under-19s the previous year in 1991. He went in the open draft and was chosen by Brisbane at choice 4, and he went on to be a great player as a key defender.
Up to full forward, Josh Fraser, done it 3 times, couldn't do it at 4, couldn't take the mark. Lepich got the hands to it.
But the real debate comes down to 2 that played for the Western Australian clubs. One, Peter Matira, a Norm Smith medalist, 250-odd games. They called him Waltzing Matira. He waltzed through them in the big games on the MCG with his great run and carry and goal-kicking ability, an All-Australian on 5 occasions.
Gets to the Adesadic contest out there. This will be interesting. Favoured by the bounce. Matira pulls away from Koutoufides, goes for home and kicks it on the run.
A superstar player matched up against a boy from SA drafted to Fremantle in Matthew Pavlik. He went across there in 1999. He ended his career with 353 games, 700 goals, of course, 6 best and fairest awards, and of course 6 times was named All-Australian.
This could be the moment.
He's got to get it.
Everybody get ready. A big roar for Matthew Pavlik. 700 big goals for this superstar of the Fremantle Football Club.
I remember Matthew Pavlik as a youngster, as a 16-year-old, playing for South Australia in our AFL Under-16 championships up in Darwin. He was a tall forward, and he was quite a mature boy at that particular stage that hadn't dominated, but he looked to have some talent. We asked his coach whether we should pick him in the National Academy, and the coach said, "We'll leave it up to you." We didn't pick him. That coach, of course, was his father, Steve. Didn't like to push up his own son. 12 months on, at 17 years of age, this strapping young man had become even more athletic and looked a real rising star. The next year, he went number 4 in the draft. I think this is a father, Steve, in not pushing up his boy, just modestly asked the others to make a judgment. But things do change, and Matthew Pavlik become a star underage player in his 18th year.
Kicks inside the 45, over the top there it is again. What a mark!
A true champion of the game, and he gets my nod, Matthew Pavlik, as the best ever choice at number 4. For the best ever choice number 3 in the draft in 30-odd years, it just goes back to 2 players and 2 superstars of the game in their particular time. One, a current-day star in Dustin Martin. Let's have a look at his record. There's still a bit to play out in his career. Already played 224 games.
Martin in an impossible position. Oh, no, it's not. It's Dustin.
Been a member of 2 premiership sides in recent years, but 2 Norm Smith medals to boot. A Brownlow medalist, a 3-time All-Australian. It puts him in a superstar category right now in AFL. He's up against Chris Judd from the West Coast Eagles and Carlton, of course chosen in that super draft back in 2001. Judd really changed the game with his acceleration from the centre.
Judd. It's a highlights reel. That is as good as it gets.
He was breathtaking. 6 times he made All-Australian. He won 2 Brownlow medals He played 279 games and won 5 club best and fairest awards. He was a premiership captain. What a debate. I've gone for Chris Judd in the finish as the best player chosen at choice 3.
Couldn't hang on. Guess who? Judd. Could he do it again? 5.5, I think so. I
Clearly remember after Chris Judd was chosen at choice 3, in his first year at the West Coast Eagles, they played him for 1 game in the Western Australian Football League, the Waffle. They didn't pick him for the Eagles. They thought that he hadn't played against men and he needed some experience at that level. Well, he had the experience of 1 game at that level, won the best player trophy back in the Waffle in that game, and the coach shook his hand at the end of the game and said, "Thanks for your efforts. I don't think we'll see you again." By round 2, he was playing in the seniors for the West Coast Eagles, and he never looked back in what was a stellar career. As you'd expect with choice 2 in the draft, you'll have plenty to consider that have gone on to be stars of the game. Worthy of consideration, I felt, were Paul Hazelby, a 200-game player with Fremantle who won the Rising Star Award. Daniel Wells, what an awesome player he turned out to be for both North Melbourne as a best and fairest winner and, of course, with his time at Collingwood.
And if this sits, Wells can get and go with plenty of space. Paddock, he can have another bounce. He can have another one. He could kick the goal. He could go all the way from 50. Big, long launch. Majestic. Wells in full flight.
Brad Ottens, drafted by Richmond at this point in the draft, but really made his name as the premiership ruckman down at the Cats. Also, worthy of consideration has to be Josh Kelly.
Back to Kelly from a tight spot. Kelly, what a kick!
And Stephen Cornelio, 2 midfield stars with the Giants that were choice number 2 when first eligible for the draft. But I've narrowed it down to 3 others that were taken at this very, very early point in the draft. In recently retired Hawthorn star Jared Ruffin, a wonderful player up forward for the Hawks in premiership sides. He captained the club. He overcome adversity to be a household name in the game.
Rough hand, tucked into the pocket, rolls it home. Big time goal.
Nigel Lapin had a similar impact, of course, with the Brisbane Lions, part of that group through the midfield that made him that unbeatable side for that three-peat.
Brown, now Lapin, who's having a lot of it in this quarter. That is a wonderful kick.
Then there's Trent Cotton, the reigning premiership captain. Twice now a premiership captain, in fact. A Brownlow medalist, Cotton has played 234 games and have been a major contributor in making the Tigers the powerhouse that it is today. I remember back to 2007 when Trent Cotton was drafted at number 2. The debate for the number 1 choice was between Cotton and, of course, Matthew Cruiser, his best mate and teammate from the Northern Knights in the NAB League. Cotton was the midfielder, of course, with that lovely step through the traffic. He also had a great ability overhead. A very talented junior he was from Essendon Grammar. A wonderful leader and young player. Trent Cotton is my nomination of the best number 2 of all time.
And the skipper goes and goes and then tries to lace it out, but no, he doesn't. He kicks a goal.
It's a great honour, of course, to be chosen as the number 1 player in the AFL draft from year to year. And over those years, some of those chosen have gone on to be wonderful players for their football club and no doubt the best player when you reflect upon it years later from that particular draft pool. I'm talking about the likes of Mark Murphy, a Carlton star over many years through the midfield. Brendan Goddard, a star with St Kilda that finished his career at Essendon, but what a super player he was.
Goddard in game number 299. What a start this is for the Bombers.
Brett Delidio, the recently retired, that was a Richmond champion, finishing his career, of course, with the Giants. But what about the young players that have been chosen at number 1 in recent years? Lachie Whitfield, an emerging superstar of the game with the Giants, already an All-Australian. Or Sam Walsh from last year. Didn't he have a wonderful first year, winning the NAB AFL Rising Star Award?
A battle of the rookies. Set sail from 50.
best player ever chosen at 1, in my view, goes down to a debate between two of the superstars of the game in the last 20 years. I'm talking about Nik Boston, 336 games, 5 times an All-Australian. He won his club best and fairest on 6 occasions, but of course that premiership success eluded him. He also won the NAB AFL Rising Star Award way back in 2002.
Goes down towards half-forward. Look out! Oh, remarkable.
Or is it Luke Hodge? 346 games, 2 Norm Smith medals, 4 premierships, and of course a 3-time All-Australian player, being captain, of course, in 2010. Hodge also won a Jim Stynes medal, playing international rules for Australia to boot, as the best player in that series. I recall very clearly the 2001 draft and the lead-in to it, when it was termed the Super Draft, even at that early stage, before the players had played. There was a very public debate between Hodge, Luke Ball, of course, and Chris Judd as to who should go at number 1. Hawthorn had that choice. They spent weeks and weeks debating it and going over it. At the time, the 3 were outstanding juniors. In the finish, they chose Hodge. I'm going to give the best player of all time selected at number 1 to Luke Hodge. Hodge gets credit from me for the work that he's done in Brisbane in the last couple of years, helping to mould that club to be a very competitive unit and playing finals this year. Hodge, the nomination is the best ever, number 1 in the history of the NAB AFL draft.
Hodge inside the 50, measures the kick. Oh, that's beautiful.